rights is not condemning racism.
So yes, Clay, what a ridiculous question. Give me a break.
I feel so badly for you. It's very easy to play a victim.
Clay, you're probably the worst moderator I've ever seen in my life. It's exactly the same language used by the American Psychiatric
You are not on Fox.
Excuse me, I will finish my statement, Chris. It is always wrong to exploit children in politics.
Okay,
and I don't care how many. Excuse me, I'll finish my statement.
Let's leave it. You made a statement. You said it. You can fool all you want to. I don't give a f***ing shit. Okay, listen.
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. In this video, we are going to watch an absolute masterclass by Michael Knowles. The way he takes this progressive down and then also has to go to war with the moderator who is having a meltdown over Michael is absolutely priceless. Easily the worst moderating performance I've ever seen.
You can fool all you want to. I don't give a f***ing shit.
And the way that Michael Knowles harnesses the ancient art of Chinese verbal ninjutsu in this episode is amazing. So just for a little bit of context as to who Michael's opponent is, the bald guy is a progressive who hosts a podcast called The Aggressive Progressive, which is funny. And last time we covered him on the channel was when he was trying to fight Jesse Lee Peterson.
We have to do that, Jesse. No, wait, why don't you explain yourself? Because you're conflicting.
I need you to interrupt me, Mr. Beta Male. Hold on. The president...
Yeah, oh, you think I'm a beta male? Come on out here.
Hold on, Beta Male.
So I guess he has sort of like a tough guy shtick going on, like a don't mess with me, aka bleeding insecurity. Let's get into the first part about climate change, where the moderator lasts all of about 3 minutes before melting down.
We all agree that we should create new jobs. We should use whatever energy is going to be efficient and help people heat their homes. The trouble with the Green New Deal is that it would not do that. It would be very counterproductive. Independent analyses of the $93 trillion Green New Deal have shown that even if you could somehow pay for it, and nobody has explained how you could pay for even a tenth of it, even if you could pay for it, it would destroy 5.8 million jobs on day one. It would outlaw immediately 90% of American energy. That's in addition to everything else that it does. I just want to point out, you mentioned that 99% of scientists agree that man-made global warming is a very, very serious problem. The number that is usually cited, speaking of hyperbole, is 97%. And this was the line in the Al Gore movie. This is the line that people cite. That number is completely bogus. It is made up. Lock it away with the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus. It is not true. That number is based on 4 studies. NASA cites 4 studies to back it up. One is by the historian Naomi Oreskes that has serious methodological problems because it only cites abstracts of papers. When you actually look into what she cites, she gets to 75% consensus. There was then a rebuttal of that. There was a refutation of it that showed that not only is it not 75%. 2008, they showed it was actually 7% of those scientists explicitly endorsed the IPCC. The second one came out, it found 97% from the scientist John Cook. This was immediately debunked in the Science and Education. Actually only found that 1% of scientists surveyed explicitly supported the IPCC conclusion of catastrophic climate change. The third study was a 2-minute survey that was sent out to 10,000 people. 3,000 responded. They took out the scientists who would have been in fields that possibly could have attributed warming to the sun. And
since you're trying to, well, instead of going through all the specific things,
since you're looking, none
of us have a library with us to go and look and check these studies. So let me ask you, instead of rebutting that,
I knew I should have asked Ruben Studdard to moderate this debate.
Don't worry. I'm sure he rehearsed that line in the bathroom this morning. So since you're rebutting things that he was mentioning, why don't we have you rebut the questions that he asked, which were specifically, why not do something about it? Because
I don't want to destroy 5.8 million jobs and get rid of 90% of American energy.
Here's the question. The question is not, he didn't ask, why don't we do the Green New Deal? And it seems like you want to,
what would you want to go again?
I don't know, I'm asking you. I'm moderating.
Chris, what would you like us to do about global warming?
I'm asking the questions, so hold on a second. Hold on a second. I'm asking the questions.
All right.
Feel free to try to control it, but you won't get to. He asked you why not do something about it. You agreed when we came out here that the climate is warming and that there is studies and proof that scientific evidence that shows
there's some
the climate is warming.
Some do not.
Okay, so my question was, why don't Republicans and Democrats agree? You did agree on that. He talked about, why don't we do something about it if we can do something about it? And you said, because I don't want to do all these things. But you're only rebutting the Green New Deal, and you're the only person who brought that up. I didn't ask about that.
Well, every presidential candidate on the left at AOC did.
I'm not one of them. I'm asking you what can be done about climate change.
Right.
Forget the Green New Deal for a second. What do Republicans believe can be done and should be done?
I'll give you a great example, because you're asking me why don't we do something. That's extraordinarily vague. I support doing something and not doing nothing. There, we all agree. The question is, what should we do? The question
I'm
is,
asking you, what should we do?
And specifically,
unless you want to cede the ground to Democrats to be the ones who come up with ideas.
I'll give you an example.
Which it seems like you're doing. Then give me one.
We were told that if President Trump pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accord, the sky would fall and the earth would be doomed. President Trump pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accord. Everything was fine. We were then told by those same people who sold it, well, it was actually better than fine. We were then told by the same people who sold it that the Paris Climate Accord would only get us 1/3 of the way towards stopping catastrophic man-made global warming, meaning the Paris Climate Accord wouldn't have done anything in the first place. But there is actually good news, because we pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord, and guess what turned out in a 2018 study? That the United States leads the world in reducing carbon emissions. And you know what else is funny? You know what else is funny from that study? All those signatories to the Paris Climate Accord, Spain, Canada, the European Union, certainly China, not only did they not abide by the regulations of the Paris Climate Accord, they actually increased their climate emissions. So the U.S., we don't join the Kyoto Protocol. We pull out of the Paris Climate Accord. We don't pass a carbon tax. We don't pass gas taxes. We don't pass cap and trade. We are still leading the world. Not only are we doing something about protecting the environment, we're doing more than anybody else.
So it did not take the moderator long for him to jump in and have to get his 2 cents worth.
Yeah.
I'm asking the questions.
All right.
Feel free to try to control it, but you won't get to.
And believe it or not, guys, this performance by the moderator gets way worse as the debate goes on. The job of a moderator is to sit there, be quiet, and interrupt only if the debate is getting off the rails, give the topics, guide the debate, and absolutely never, never come in with your agenda. Something that he will fail at in a very miserable way throughout this entire video. But this is because he has caught the liberal mind virus. And what happens when you catch the liberal mind virus is your body actually starts to just spasm every time you hear stats refuting climate change, as Michael did there.
None of us have a library with us to go and look and check these studies.
I mean, isn't it funny when Michael gives the facts, the science, then the trust the science people all of a sudden say, oh, we can't fact check these studies, you can't bring them up. So let's carry on now, where the tough guy shtick and the shocking moderating continues and gets worse when the topic of the orange man is brought up. The subject that is truly the kryptonite of the entire left.
We will make America great again.
So climate change is not a big, huge, it's not something that scares you, right? This
No,
moment.
I don't lose sleep over it.
What are you losing sleep over in this country? What do you think the biggest threat is?
The biggest threat in the country is a collapsing of our institutions.
Like, what does that mean?
Such as
what do you mean? What do you mean? Yeah, give me an
example.
example.
A lack of faith in our institutions of our republic. So, for instance, the idea that we can't trust the Supreme Court, that we can't trust Congress or the Senate, that we can't trust to have our elections be upheld, that we actually, over time, will overturn our presidential elections if the Congress doesn't like it. That's a major issue. The erosion of our faith in our institutions comes down from an erosion of our political discourse. Because of this scourge of censorship and political correctness, people no longer feel that they can debate things in good faith. I mean, Chris and I are debating back and forth very much in good faith. That's a rare occurrence now. What we are told increasingly is, if you don't agree with me on 100% of things, you're a hater. If you hold opinions that were perfectly fine 3 years ago, that we have, as the left, decided are no longer fine, you will lose your job, you will lose your reputation, you will lose your livelihood. That erodes trust in our public debate. Self-government requires that kind of debate, and we're losing it fast.
Do you think it's fair that the president has been labeled a racist, that he's been labeled a fascist, that he's been labeled an authoritarian? Do you think that's hyperbole, or do you think it's a fair assessment?
I think that the president, I don't know that I would go ahead and call him a racist, but I do think he has pandered to racists, and that bothers me. I think Charlottesville is the perfect example of that. Charlottesville was a clear-cut case of racism. It was a racist group that resulted in the death of a protester. You might not like the way she protested, you might not like the groups, but it was a racist group out there chanting racist things, and the president had one thing to do that day, and that was to condemn it, and he didn't.
He did.
And that's just one example of him pandering to that kind of culture. And I think the president needs to be above that. Presidents need to have grace. They need to rise above this kind of thing. They need to rise above it. Some of you might like the fact that this president is scrappy and he gets down in the mud, but it's not sustainable as a society. It's leading to this society being increasingly at each other's throats. And he's got to push back from it. He's got to lead. He's got to be the one to bring people together, not push people apart, and that bothers me.
Do you think you said he did condemn it. Do you think that his statements in Charlottesville, I mean, that's over a year ago, but do you think that his statements in Charlottesville were enough? Do you think that what Chris is saying about his responsibility to lead was displayed that day?
I think, it is simply a matter of fact that he did explicitly condemn white supremacists and racists at Charlottesville, and he did it repeatedly, and he's done it repeatedly on the campaign trail. You might still object to his rhetoric, but he has repeatedly, for years and years, condemned racists. He even one time said, how many times do I have to condemn David Duke? I hate David Duke. I don't like David Duke. So he's done that repeatedly. And yet, most people don't know that because of a mainstream media narrative that President Trump is a racist, because, in that case, they explicitly lied about what he said. These words have meaning. One of my favorite examples of this is the CNN contributor Ariva King was on the radio show with our friend David Webb. And she was talking to David Webb, and she accused him of exploiting racism and exploiting his white privilege, which was a big shock to David Webb because David Webb is a black man, and she had just never seen him before. She didn't call him a white privileged guy because she thought it was true. She did it because it was politically convenient, and if he had been a white guy, she could have gotten a lot of play with it. That's very dangerous. Words have meaning. There is no evidence that President Trump is a racist or an anti-Semite.
Words do have meaning. The president's words have more meaning than anybody else's words, and he needs to choose them carefully. Last night, he tweets out, "Something big just happened." Now, yeah, something big did happen. The president's words move markets. They scare people. When the president tweets, it scares people. It moves markets. His words matter more than mine, more than yours, more than anybody else's on the planet. And he does not choose them carefully. And that is leading to problems in this country. It has led to problems in the markets as well from time to time from what he said. And he needs to be more careful with that. I think you would agree with that. I think you need to agree with that.
He tells me,
last time I told you to agree with something, you should have just agreed with me.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. He told me that he uses the very best words, and I think he probably does. And I think, frankly, when the left tells you to say something, you can show them the underside of your chin. I think so much of the trouble in this country is the left tells us you have to say this, you have to believe that, you have to say Trump is a racist and an anti-Semite. Trump has a town named after him in Israel. If he's an anti-Semite, he's the worst anti-Semite in the history of the world. He's very ineffective at it. If Trump,
I'm not calling him a racist and an anti-Semite. I'm saying his words matter, and he needs to choose them better. He makes statements that move markets, offend people, get people to act in a certain way, and he needs to be better at it.
But Chris, look, we could all use better words. What I'm saying is, if at Charlottesville, if he explicitly condemned racists and white supremacists, we would agree that's a good thing. The president should do that.
His first reaction should have been that. His first reaction was good people on both sides.
In the very same paragraph,
good people on both sides is not condemning racism. There were no good people marching saying Jews will not replace us. Not one good person. Not one of those people was a good person. Not one of them. Not one.
Now, if you read down 2 paragraphs, as he is saying that,
he still said there were good people on both sides.
What he's saying is,
and you know it, and I know it. That's what he said.
Well,
good people on both sides.
Let me ask it this way. Let me ask it this way. Let me ask it this way.
Sure.
Are people who are marching and shouting "Jews will not replace us"? Are they good people?
I don't
yes
know.
or no? Just a yes or no question. Yes or no? No, it's a yes or no question.
What a ridiculous question.
Are people?
Great.
You can boo me off.
The reason.
No, because are you able to answer the question?
One conservative
yes
because
or
they know
no?
that it's a fair fight.
Yes or no? Are people who are marching shouting "Jews will not replace us"?
Nazis are bad, Clay. We agree. Nazis are bad. Okay.
Can you say yes or no to this? Are you capable of that?
I can. Hey, Clay.
Can you say yes or no to it?
Let me ask you a question, Clay.
I don't need to answer a question because I'm not on the stage.
Clay,
can you answer the question? Yes or no?
You just asked me if Nazis are bad, and I told you Nazis are bad.
No, I did not ask you if Nazis were bad.
Of course you did.
I asked you to say yes or no.
Yes or no.
And I understand those are big words.
Really bad. Yeah, I think they're really bad, Clay.
Are people marching saying Jews will not replace us good people? Yes or no?
They're bad people, Clay. People who are Nazis are bad people, Clay.
That's not what I asked you.
I've answered this 5 times.
No, you haven't. You've chosen to answer it the way you want to answer it.
We'll go back in the tape later.
You're rewording.
You're rewording. That I did
you're rewording.
This is exactly Clay. What you're doing right now is exactly what the mainstream media did to Trump at Charlottesville. It's the exact same thing. I gave a perfectly clear answer, and then you tried to pretend that I didn't.
I feel so bad for you. I feel so badly for you.
Why do you feel
very easy to play a victim. Let me ask you this.
Why do you feel
Let me ask you this.
Hey, guys.
You can boo all you want to. I don't give a shit. Okay, listen.
So Michael is handling himself very well here, but what's about to happen is that he's going to drop the whole Mr. Nice Guy act, and he is going to make these 2 men his bitch. I mean, it's really not easy to have 2 people coming at you from 2 different directions like this, and to have a moderator that's ego is such that he's actually not capable of shutting his mouth during the debate. And Michael's also correct about this weasel doing exactly what the mainstream media does to Donald Trump. What they will do is they'll get a very nuanced topic and they will say, if you do not completely and utterly condemn every single person at this protest, and if you have any understanding or sympathy for the grievances of these individuals who felt the need to go and protest, any of them, even one, then you are basically a Nazi. I mean, this has been happening recently a lot in the UK with the far right.
Far-right extremists have been condemned by the British Prime Minister following a weekend of violent protests and rioting across England.
Now, needless to say, if you wanted to be bad faith as well, you could just flip their logic back on them and you could say, do you condemn BLM? Is BLM bad? Yes or no? And if they say anything but condemning BLM, then they may as well have burnt down the buildings and killed the civilians themselves. But no. Michael doesn't do that. And the reason why he doesn't do that is because he is actually capable of having a logical debate that is not fueled by soy emotions.
Hold on, Beta Mel.
Now let's watch the next part where the libs continue with their emotional arguments and Michael makes them look like babbling fools and simps for each other, by the way, by just keeping it cool and facts-based.
I think our rhetoric is too extreme.
Let me ask you this. Jeff, here's a yes or no question for you. Does President Trump lie?
Oh, I think every human being lies.
I asked a yes or no question. Does President Trump lie? Yes or no?
He lies as much as everyone else lies. Yes, he does.
It is amazing. Can I ask you a yes or no question?
Actually,
does President Trump lie?
President Trump lies.
Okay.
All the time. 7 to 10 times a day, he lies. He lies about little things. And if somebody lies about little things, you can't believe them about the big things. And that's the problem with him.
So I'll give you an answer on this.
A rowdy crowd.
Because I'll give you an answer.
I like it.
You're asking if President Trump lies. Of course he lies, everybody lies. The question is, what is the nature of those lies? Does he lie and say he's got the biggest crowd sizes ever? Yes. Is that quite a lie or is that an exaggeration?
China called. We're really close to a deal. China never called.
Yeah.
China doesn't call. China's a country. They didn't call. They never called. He lied. The market responded to that lie, and some of the president's friends probably made some money off of that call.
So, I'll explain this.
Lie.
So, if we're talking about honesty and lies, let's just show President Trump's record compared to his predecessors. President Trump, I think one of the best left-wing arguments against Trump is that he's actually a little bit too honest and says things that he shouldn't say because he should hide it. When the Heritage Foundation did a study right after he was elected, within the first year, showed that he was affecting more of his agenda more quickly than any of his predecessors on the conservative side. I'll give you another example. The embassy in Jerusalem. Since 1995, the official policy of the United States has been to move our embassy in Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Clinton didn't do it even though he said he would. Bush didn't do it even though he said he would. Obama didn't do it even though he said he would. So when Trump said that he would, nobody believed him. I didn't believe him. I never thought it would happen. Then Trump, because he's new to politics, just goes out there and he says, I think I'm going to fulfill my campaign promise. He moves the embassy. People are shocked and horrified. They say this is an international incident. It's only because he told the truth. And frankly, if I've got to choose between a guy who's got a little dodgy personal life and who tells lies about crowd sizes, and if we're talking about lies on matters of important public policy, I want the guy to be honest on public policy. I don't care what he says in his personal life. life.
He was.
Before you start, since clearly the audience thinks I'm biased, we're going to let them ask some questions too.
Clay, we're
going to let them ask some questions too.
Office as a Democrat. I think you have your biases.
I just want to point something out as a progressive who goes on Fox News. I'm used to biased hosts. I know you're not. I am. It's kind of nice to have one that's
CNN doesn't
kind
invite any conservatives on.
And by the way, you could boo me. I'm used to it when I'm in conservative crowds. I love you anyway. But Clay Aiken, man, he's like a national treasure.
Me, I get booed all the time. I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it.
Don't boo.
You know what? I'll say this. You know what I'll say? Stop it, Chris. I'm a big boy. I can handle myself. I'll say this. I did a great panel yesterday with Anna Kasparian and Tommy Lahren. A lot of fans of Tommy Lahren and Anna Kasparian, both sides. I will say, I may be a hack, but I've got the fucking microphone. So,
Wow. Just wow. When you thought the bias could not get any worse, the lib on the panel, the aggressive progressive he calls himself, starts brown-nosing the moderator and white-knighting for him, protecting him against the big, mean audience that is just trying to exact a little bit of street justice. This is not going well for these boys, and it is about to get a whole lot worse. And now for my favourite part of the debate by far. When an audience member comes up and just calls out the moderator and completely destroys him in front of everybody. Fantastic moment. And then the back and forth that ensues after is an absolute masterclass by Smooth Mickey. And there's also one moment of the most pure and blatant hypocrisy from the aggressive progressive that we could hope for. See if you guys can pick up on that moment, and then I'll check in after.
Let's move on.
So before I ask my question, I just want to say, Clay, you're probably the worst moderator I've ever seen in my life. Asking very dishonest yes or no questions, but anyway.
That's perfectly fine. I've yet to win anything, so sure. I always come in second place. Ruben will be doing one down the hall, so go ahead and ask
did you ever stop beating your children, yes or no? That's a stupid question. Anyways, I just wanted to say, so this event was, your guys' talk was marketed as, finishing unfinished business, and it was over this argument you guys had over Greta Thunberg about, you said that she was like autistic or whatever. He got really mad at you, and that was the whole thing. And we never even addressed that in the talk. So I was wondering, like, if you guys could maybe quickly address that or something.
Sure, I would be happy to. So obviously, of course, there is nothing shameful about living with any sort of mental condition. I certainly never suggested that it was, and I certainly never meant to suggest that it was. What is shameful is exploiting children, particularly vulnerable children, for political purposes. And we're seeing this happen in the case of climate change, which is very, very awful, but we've seen it happen before. We've seen it happen to traumatized children in the case of pushing gun control. The left perpetually uses children as human shields for precisely this purpose, to shut down debate. And it's a cheap political trick that they do, and so I object to it on that front. But it's also extraordinarily harmful to children. You're seeing this happen again and again, and so I object to it outright.
But that's not what you did. That's not what happened. What happened was you called her a mentally ill Swedish child. This is a woman who was speaking before the United Nations. She's 16 years old. She's a child. She's autistic. Whatever. Instead of going after her arguments and having a debate about what she said, he decided to say, don't listen to her. She's a mentally ill.
I never said anything of the kind.
This is what you were inferring in that. And
No, that's what you inferred. It's not what I implied,
Hold on,
friend.
skinny boy. Relax. I got this.
Only because that's a compliment.
I had to pull it out. Come on. It's like my tagline now. Look, what the right has been doing, and sometimes the left does it too, is when they don't have an answer to the attack, they attack the person raising the question. She is saying we have a problem with climate change. She is leading a large movement of kids around the world that want to see our governments do something about climate change. You might disagree with her message, then disagree with her message. But pointing out her perceived disability that you say, that was not right.
Chris.
And when you're 16 years old and you're talking to a guy who's got a 13-year-old kid and a 26-year-old kid, and I'm looking at you saying, come on, man, you're an adult.
Right.
She's a child.
Chris, that's right.
Do not pick on a child.
That's right, Chris. You have teenage kids, which is why you should know much better than to exploit children for political purposes.
I'm not.
I have 20 pages of notes here that can refute every one of your climate change arguments.
I don't believe she's being exploited for political purposes. I think
you're misdirecting this again. You're misdirecting again, but I'm going to keep talking until I get to finish.
Yeah.
Because the reason that you're deflecting is because you don't want to answer the question of when it is okay to exploit children in politics. The line that I used is exactly the same language used by Psychology Today. It's exactly the same language used by the girl's mother. It's exactly the same language used by the American Psychiatric Association.
You were not on Fox.
And it's totally relevant because you are not only...
You were not on Fox to talk about
the climate change
You were on Fox to talk about climate change.
Excuse me, I will finish my statement, Chris. I was on Fox to talk about the climate change movement. No, not climate change. The climate change movement.
Right.
And
we were actually there to talk about Meatless Monday.
And Meatless Monday should have come up.
Else
what I said is that it is wrong of the left to try to advance their climate change arguments by exploiting a child. And then I cited a relevant fact as to why it's especially bad to exploit vulnerable children. And if that's not the only time they've done it, they did it in Parkland too to traumatize kids. So my question to you, Chris, is when is it not okay to exploit children for politics?
I think it was the guns that got the kids kind of upset in Parkland. I don't think it was the people. I think the guns that were used to kill their friends.
Right, and then the left used the children.
And I think they led a movement to react to things that adults are not doing. Okay, now, look, here's the thing. Here's what you actually said. You said if this was a real movement, it would be led by scientists, not a mentally ill Swedish child.
No, I said if it were about science,
there have been scientific marches for 10 years on climate change.
Scientists
there have been
don't
scientists
march, Chris.
calling
Political
it out.
Activists march. Scientists conduct studies.
We probably could use a psychologist here today, but we don't. None of us are. So let's let him have the final word.
Thank you,
question.
Scientists don't march. You've just revealed exactly the point that I'm making. This has become highly politicized. It is always wrong to exploit children in politics.
Okay, let's leave it at that.
Excuse me, I'll finish my statement.
Excuse me. You made it. You said it a few times. You made it a few times.
Excuse me.
If you had a question, go ahead.
Excuse me.
Go ahead and ask your question. You said it's always wrong to exploit children in politics. That's the point you made. You've said it a few times.
But I want to point out something. I want to point out something about this debate.
You've got folks who are fans of yours in line who want to ask questions.
Would you mind if I finish my point? Thank you very much. I would like to point out something. Whenever you question the left's tactic of using children as human shields, which I'm doing right now, you both interject as quickly as you can to shut it down, which is an absolute validation of my opposition to that awful tactic.
You've said it 4 times. I let you say it. I let you have the last word.
Well, he let me say it, actually.
No, you said it, and then I said, you've said it, so now let's move on, and you wanted to say it 2 more times.
Well,
so congratulations, you've said it 3 more times. Let's let him ask his question.
My pleasure.
Okay.
All right.
So, first of all, the moment of hypocrisy there. The aggressive progressive is getting so mad and saying, oh, no, you can't call Greta Thunberg a mentally ill Swedish child, which she was at the time, and we definitely shouldn't listen to her.
What's the message you would like to send to our leaders by doing what you are doing?
I think what we want to send is, the message we want to send is to say that we have had enough. And anyone else wants to ask that question? I can't speak on behalf of everyone. Anyone wants to answer about the message to world leaders?
But then in the very next breath, he turns around and he calls Michael Knowles skinny boy. Is that a personal attack I hear? But more to the point here, guys. Michael Knowles just perfectly demonstrated there how to completely and utterly own a debate and dominate the space. He doesn't let anybody push him around. He puffs his chest out and he's uncompromising when he needs to be, but whilst sticking to the facts. And the reason why this particular exchange is so impressive is because there's a few different levels that Michael has achieved there. First of all, he's got 2 people there who are trying to dominate him, who are trying to insult him and bully him into submission. He absolutely wrecked them, whilst at the very same time winning over the applause of the audience and getting the last laugh. Literally.
Let's let him ask his question.
My pleasure.
Okay.
All right, this is for...
Bravo, Smooth Mickey. Bravo, my friend. And now for the last bit, guys. Let's watch the aggressive progressive's reaction to this exchange, which is just so telling. See, guys, in life, when people try and bully you, the best thing you can do is punch them straight in the nose. Figuratively, of course. And so often in these situations, the people who are trying to bully you are actually very insecure. And as soon as you show that you are not to be messed with and that you won't take any shit, their true colors just come flowing out, and the cowardice within them is on full display. And normally they'll back down and their primal instincts will kick in and they will realize that they are not the alpha in the room. I mean, at the very least, they won't pick on you again. But sometimes they will bow their head and realize that the big dog is in the room. The big dog has got to eat. And on this night, Michael Knowles left this arena with a full belly. Now watch the very moment that this man realized who the big dog was and then acted accordingly.
Right, this is for Chris. You stated presidents should be above words and have better responses. I know you're far from presidential, but would you take your own advice and be above Michael's comment today?
I don't even know what that means.
Which comment does he need to be above?
About the that climate change should not be led by a mentally ill Swedish child who's being exploited.
I stand by what I stand by my reaction. It was an honest, real-time reaction. Look, Mike's got notes. I don't begrudge people who have notes. I've been going on TV a long time. I've never had notes. I read, I come, and I react at my top of my intelligence, okay? This is not, look, when he said that, I had a visceral reaction to that. I actually regret calling him skinny boy. I do. And I said that. If you listen to my podcast, you'll say, now I'm going to tell you why I called it. Mike knows the story. We met yesterday for the first time. I'll tell you the story. Is that okay if I tell the story? So we were supposed to talk about Meatless Monday. And whenever I get a topic like Meatless Monday, which I consider the conservative outrage of the day, I try to make fun of it. I try to make it look ridiculous. I come up with a little shtick. And one of my shtick was I've traveled around this country and maybe we could use a day off from meat. I haven't taken a single day off from meat here in Nashville, though, and I don't recommend anybody do that. But I didn't know Mike. And I didn't want to be saying that, you know, doing fat jokes with a heavy guy, so I looked into the monitor and I see this thin, young guy, and I had in my head, oh, he's a skinny boy.
And I will say, in your defense, Chris, I took it as a compliment.
You are thin. You're very thin. Thinner than me. I'm jealous a little bit. So that's how it came about. I don't like name calling in politics. I don't like it at all. I want to see us come together and try to solve problems. But when people start doing name calling, it makes the whole thing just seem completely irrelevant, and people turn off to it, and we've got to stop that. And to the extent that I'm part of it, I'm trying to do better, and I think we could all do better.
So Mike has gone from skinny boy to a really great guy who's in really good shape, and actually I'm kind of jealous of him. There is a big lesson here, guys. Michael Knowles won that fight, and not a hair on his Sicilian head was ruffled. Not a punch was thrown, but Michael Knowles left this debate looking like Mufasa, and the other guys like some little hyenas.
Oh, please. Uncle.
Silence!
Hey, come on, we're going to shut up right now. We're really sorry.
Brilliant work indeed. So guys, as per usual, do not forget to like this video if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you're getting value. All my links are going to be below. You can find me in all of those wonderful places that I'm at, and if you guys would like to watch another one, right here. Till next time, I'm Jake. This is RattlesnakeTV, keeping you armed and dangerous.